Yeah, so joined by Nisha Vyas, one of our faculty. And the reason why I asked Nisha to join me in a conversation was, when was it, Nisha? I guess it was about 3 or 4 months ago when I was beginning to kind of reshape certain aspects of Animas. I had one-to-ones with each of the faculty members. And of course, you came on to Animas when I was retired on my boat. And so I didn't get to know you too well. And when I was speaking to you, I was like, wow, this person's doing so much. And I remember the thing that struck home was you said something like, I'm pretty much coaching 5-6 hours a day every day, and I love it. And I just thought, isn't that what most coaches want? So let me have a conversation with Nisha and find out how you did that. So on that note, welcome to the call, Nisha. Just give, for those who don't know, just give us a little heads up who you are. Just tell us something about yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. Thank you for that introduction. And nice to see some familiar faces here. So hello. So my name's Nisha, and I call myself an executive coach, transformative coach. I'm also an Animas trainer. I'm a mentor and a supervisor. And essentially, I help leaders, aspirational leaders, to step up to their full potential. Also work in the corporate world, empowering leaders to develop productive and engaged and motivated teams. But essentially, like Nick said, I'm just living, I feel like it's, I don't know whether I should say living my best life, but living my best coaching life. And yeah, absolutely loving what I do every day. So
thank you so much, Nisha. Right, so just to give context for those who've not been to one of these before, I will interview Nisha for about 30 to 35 minutes, and then we'll do open Q&A. And I think this is a good chance to do some good Q&A, Nisha, because I'm sure there'll be some questions for you around how you built up this very mixed portfolio. And I noticed that in conversation with Justin, who's of course my events manager, you've called this something like building a coaching practice outside of your niche. And I just renamed it this morning on the lounge as without a niche, because I suspect that's what you really meant. So, or I suspect that's what Justin really meant. So I wonder if you can just tell us, like, what is your business? What is your practice right now? Just give us the kind of the big picture.
Yeah, and the reason why I said outside of the niche rather than without it is because when I first came into coaching, I was quite clear that I wanted to work in the world of football and I wanted to work with leaders in football. And now that's really starting to emerge more and more. But whilst that's emerging, I'm still also working quite happily within other projects. So rather than being 100% fixated on just one niche and one type of client, I feel like I've got this rhythm now of being able to work within other areas and essentially just widen my portfolio of clients and essentially my revenue streams. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of what it is that I do. So I work as a transformative coach and I run my own coaching practice. So I work with private clients and have done. So when I first came into the coaching space, I went out just like everyone else did and put myself out there as a coach and built some clients that way. And it was a great learning opportunity for me to work with different people and decide who I didn't want to work with. Also, when I first started out, I wasn't charging a lot. So I've still got some clients where they pay a lot less than I charge, say, within my corporate world. So I work with my private clients. And also, as I said, when I first started, I wanted to work in the world of football. And so I built up a network and have continued to build up a network within the football arena. And I'll share a little bit more about how that's progressing. I'm also an Animas trainer, which allowed me to really step into my facilitation and group coaching expertise. And that is something that I actually stepped into before becoming an Animas trainer. So actually, if I'm going to give my first top tip for everyone that's here, it is to allow yourself to be brave and say yes to things and go in. I remember pitching up, I did a group facilitation workshop through a CPD through Animas, and I remember just booking spaces, pitching up with my my pop-up banner and my laptop, putting together a presentation and just building workshops and just by trial and error. And I remember there was one day I had 3 people turn up, 20 seats and 3 people turn up to my workshop. I essentially paid for this workshop to run because I was charging pennies for it. But that's the first top tip I would give people, even me being here and the conversation that I had with Nick. I think, Nick, I may have put this off slightly in the past because there's always that voice in your head that says, oh, can I quite do this? Am I quite ready? Am I the right person? So my top tip is just feel the fear and just step into it. Go out there, do these things, especially when it comes to to working with people in the transformative coaching space. So anyway, I digress. So private coaching, Animas trainer, which started off with me essentially putting myself out into the space and running workshops. I'm an affiliate coach for Better Up, and there's lots of different affiliate companies. Better Up's one that I work with, and that was an absolute game changer for me. Nick, should I go into this in a little bit more detail as I walk through them?
Well, if you lay out the kind of the landscape first,
Sure,
and then we'll dive
sure,
into it.
Yeah. So I'm an affiliate coach for Better Up, which has been fantastic for me. I'm also a performance coach for Ivy House. So there's a couple of companies that I work with in the affiliate space. And I'm also a coach and mentor in the education space and work with young people from the ages of 12 to about 16 in high school. And I also run a supervision and mentoring practice, and have honoured to have come through the supervision school with Nick, and yeah, I'm a qualified supervisor now, and also mentor coaches as well. I think that's everything.
That's really extraordinary, Nisha. Just remind us, to give us some context, when did you first train as a coach formally?
2018.
2018, wow. And you're already a PCC coach, so that means you've developed way over 500 hours of coaching. So one of the things I'm really fascinated by at the moment is what marks a coach out who achieves what they want to versus those that don't. And it sounds like and I don't mean this in any judgmental sense, it's just that we have an idea of what we want to do as a coach. Some people end up doing it and some people don't. Mm-hmm. What was the secret, if there is such a thing, to your ability to kind of clock up the hours, get this wide, diverse range of ways of working, and essentially succeed in the way that you wanted to succeed?
I think, and I'm going to elaborate on this, but the first thing that I did before I even stepped into the coaching space and trained as a coach was a large amount of personal development. And actually, personal development for me is an ongoing thing. And I really do think that I work just as hard on myself as I do my business and my mindset. And what happened as I trained as a coach is that started to also expand. So I was introduced to the world of supervision and the world of mentoring as well as coaching. And so a combination of all of that reflective practice has allowed me to really master, I want to say master my craft. And I really do feel like I have got to the space where I've mastered the craft. But to answer your question, Nick, I think it was definitely a combination of personal development, working on myself, being coached, supervision, receiving supervision, understanding the importance of how we work with people. And also, I think there is a lot of intuition here. So I am very, again, as part of me working on myself, I'm also very much in tune with what feels right and what doesn't. And I'll explain that a little bit more when I talk about the school, because some of the things have come into play and I wasn't quite sure, it wasn't, when I first started coaching, I didn't think I'm going to work with young people. It happened, but I think there's a part of you trusting the process and being open to things. But the other thing I wanted to say about the secret of this is, and I think this is very important for everyone that's listening, is the social media and understanding that there are people, and no disrespect to the people, but there are people who have built a business based on working with coaches who are vulnerable in the space. And when I say vulnerable, you're new to coaching, you're not quite sure what it is that you're doing in the space. So there is a lot of messaging out there about you must, create your niche. And if you haven't created your niche, then your business won't be successful. Or, if you're not earning £10,000 a month, your business is not successful. And what I would say is that whilst a lot of that messaging can hold a lot of value, and there are some really brilliant coaches out there that are doing some great work with coaches, what I would say is don't be sucked into thinking that you need to become an overnight success. And I think that's what social media tends to do. So to answer your question, Nick, what I did was I tried to keep the focus fully on myself and not allowing myself to be distracted by a lot of the messaging out there, because when I did, that's when I found building my practice the hardest. And that's when I used to put a lot of pressure on myself, and that's when I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So let's start with the kind of the key topic of today, which was building a practice outside of your niche. It sounds like when you started as training as a coach, you had a niche, which was football. that was a context you were working in already, I guess. Nisha, tell us a little bit about that first.
Yeah, so my background, from the age of 21, I've worked in the football industry. I fell into the football industry and I absolutely loved it. Started off working at Wembley Stadium before it was built, so we were a part of the Wembley Stadium project. And now when I look back in hindsight, what I really loved was working with people. We worked with a lot of the VIPs, had a large number of clients, and I really loved all the communication side of things and supporting them. And so, and that was a huge project, and it came with a lot of perks. And that was when I first started to work with people who were very, very high profile and very senior. And I started to be able to recognize, actually, these are human beings, even though there was still something going on for me, like, oh my God, there's, you know, so-and-so. I started to step into this recognition, we're all human. I then went on to work on the London 2012 Olympics, which again was amazing. And again, that propelled my, you know, the network of people that I was working with again, and on a global scale. And then I finally went into work with Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, and transitioned from the old stadium into the new stadium. And that's when I got even closer to working with a number of agents and players and, you know, globally recognized names. And it was fantastic, and I really loved it. And I was also a people manager, so I was doing elements of training. And as a people manager, I went through the process of being a micromanager, and not a great leader, to a leader. And that was through coaching. When I discovered personal development, I really threw myself into it. So I'd been playing with it for a number of years, you know, reading and being in the personal development space. But then when I hit a tough time in my career, that's when I really threw myself into the personal development space, and it transformed me. Literally, I went from being someone who was, I would say, not very nice to work for because I was always stressed and under pressure, to then becoming what was a coach and mentor in the space. But what I recognized was that my environment was not in the same space as me. So I started to transform how I worked and started to build a team that were feeling fulfilled and motivated and inspired, but I don't feel that my environment was supportive of that. So it became increasingly difficult. And so I did what I wouldn't necessarily advise everyone else to do, but I made a decision one day that this is not what I want to do with my life. This is what I want to do with my life. And I quit my job and then went in to train as a coach. So I'm laughing about it now because when I look back, I'm like, that was very risky. But there was just something about me following this intuition. Because I remember the first day I walked into Animas, and it was Marcus Stone that had trained me on that first module. And there was just something about the way I was able to breathe, the environment, the space. Even before we trained, I could just feel in my bones that this is where I'm meant to be. And I remember when I first trained, if you don't mind me sharing, Nick, I remember thinking, oh, so this is coaching, because I actually didn't really know what coaching was until I came into that space. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm not quite sure if I'm going to do it like this. I think I'm going to tweak it slightly. And it was really interesting how I learned very quickly that my tweaks were not going to work. Yeah, I might have digressed a little bit there, but
that's great. Just to get clear here, you were involved in all that sports world, and then you said you left your job. So now the work you do, is it employed or are you as a freelancer? What's that sort of setup?
Yeah, no, I'm complete freelance. I work self-employed, work for myself. And sorry, the biggest piece of the puzzle was I remember when I left going, I want to bring transformational coaching into this space. I didn't quite know transformational coaching, what it was at the time, but I knew that what I wanted to bring into this space and what they needed was to be able to work in a way that we develop the human being and recognize that we are all human first before we are, you know, working as whether we're leaders or whatever role we play. Because if I'm being totally honest, the work that I was doing or the space that I was in was not only damaging to me physically, but also mentally. I was quite sick by the time I left corporate. And so I was like, this is happening all over and over in lots of different places. And it doesn't take a lot because I was able to get support. I'm sure we can do this for others. So to go back to my niche, my focus was, right, I want to come back into this space and do that. And I'm proud to say that I am doing that now, but it's taken me almost 4 years to get there. And that could have been a struggle, but it hasn't been, because of the way I've been working. So it's allowed me to step into that space with confidence and clarity, and without the pressure of being desperate for these corporate contracts. But now they're starting to come through, and I've always stayed in the space. I've made sure I've gone to all the networking events and stayed present in as many of the football communities as possible, so that I just started to build relationships. So that's another thing I would say. I'm not saying don't have a niche, but just allow yourself time to build these niches so that you can have credibility within them.
Yeah, great. I want to explore the kind of the way you've mushroomed off into other areas, but I want to stay with this for a bit, if I may. So you resigned from your job, you then trained as a coach. Are you coaching in the same place you resigned from, or just a similar context?
Yeah, I know, a similar context. So
Okay.
Yeah, no, maybe one day I'd love to.
Okay.
But I think that would be the toughest one, just because of and actually it's one of the toughest environments. But I'm actually quite fortunate to work with some of the associations, which is at a much bigger scale. So that's another thing, I don't know whether this is going to sound a bit corny, but, dream big, because the people that I'm working with now and the contacts that I have now are way bigger than I planned to. And I also remember when I first came out, I kept talking myself out of it. So every time I would say I want to work in football, then I would start to, have this negative self-talk and play small. And what I would say is that when you, and over time, where I've been able to master my coaching craft, it's allowed me to be able to step into these places confidently, if that makes sense. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of intrigued by the idea of leaving something, but then going back to it, not exactly the same thing, but going back to it, because I think that's a lot of coaches, when they train as a coach, they want to break away from the thing that they came from, but often they do find their way back to it in a new kind of format, which is essentially what you've done. What would you say are some of the kind of critical lessons you drew along the way in that particular context? In other words, going back to where you came from, but in a new way.
Yeah, so again, imposter syndrome. So I recognized that I was creating a whole new identity. So every time I spoke up on LinkedIn, I realized that my old audience are the ones that are watching the most. The football industry were watching me the most, because you can see the views on LinkedIn. And I remember just thinking, well, actually, this is something that, what's been interesting is I've been contacted by people, but privately, to say that they'd like the coaching, because actually, even though coaching is quite a well, it comes from sports, it's not that common behind the scenes for people to be coached. So so I would say, going back to your question, it was feeling a bit impossible, recognizing I'm creating a whole new business, and some of the people wouldn't know that this Nisha that works in this way. Also, I think sometimes we can assume that people, because they know you and you have the relationships, that they're going to just open up the doors for you as you come out into this space. And one of my biggest learnings was that's not the case. When you are a part of a brand, a globally recognized brand, people will speak to you. You will be contacted endlessly. When you decide to come out and wave the flag of Nisha Vyas or Nick, it's a very different world. And you need to, I recognize then I had to recreate and rebuild the credibility and who I was in that space. That was a rude awakening. And also, and I'm sure a lot of us recognize this as well, don't assume that your friends are going to give you business, or people that you've been close to over the years that are going to give you business. They're usually going to be your biggest critics, but don't take it personally and don't allow it to put you off.
Wow, that's amazing. So I really want to get into this kind of the way you've diversified as well, but I want to ask one more question here, which is, so I can definitely see everything you're saying, and I'm kind of curious, how did you overcome that? Well, she's no longer part of this global brand, she's now just Nisha Vyas. What was your process for overcoming that and building credibility again?
If I'm being really honest, I think when you are passionate about what you're doing and you continue to work it and master the craft. So what allowed me to step into the space and stay in the space is working with people, just coaching Nick and seeing the transformation over and over again. And I don't mean that in an egotistical way. I'm not saying that everyone that works for me is, has a transformation, but the work was being done. And for me, I knew that this was coming from an authentic space. So therefore, it wasn't difficult. I wasn't trying to follow a strategy. I wasn't trying to sell, wasn't trying to follow sales structures. And this is what I mean by this might go against a lot of the things that you guys hear. But for me, it was just like, show up and give value. I know what I'm talking about. I know that I've been there. I've been in the space where a lot of my colleagues who work in football have been, and you know, the burnout and the stress and the overwhelm, working 50, 60 hours a week, and the impact that had on me, also my mindset and how I felt. And so being there, living that life, coming across, training as a coach, working with people, whether they were in the football industry or not, and then reaching out to young footballers and mentoring. You know, I'm luckily, because of the amount of work that I do, which is paid, I have 3 footballers that I mentor for free. And it's great. It's a great experience for me because it allows me to support them. But that I also learn from that space as well, and then keep showing up. And for me, I think the most important thing is adding value. So if I'm going to show up on social media, I try to avoid being salesy and using sales strategies. I like to show up and add value.
So it sounds, if I can summarize it, it sounds like your strategy, not strategy, but your approach was simply one client at a time, rather than trying to build the brand of Nisha Vyas. Is that about right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And you said it took about 4 years to get to the place where this corporate thing's really taking off. So how did you, this is the diversification bit, I guess. So how did you then support yourself as a coach across those 4 years? And you've talked about these other routes like Better Up and so on. What was that journey like? How did you do that?
Yeah, so it wasn't always easy. It was quite tough. So when as I said, I quit my job and still had a mortgage to pay. And so I did have, I would say the first year of building my business was quite tough. And that's where a lot of the time for me was being spent on trying to be on social media and think that I had to do certain things in order to create a business, and also focusing on money. But actually, when I decided to change my mindset, that's where it started. It all started with the mindset. So I changed my mindset on how I was approaching things and approaching the business, and just breathe. Like, yes, you can have a vision and you can have a goal and you can have a niche, but actually just allow that to evolve and just be in the space. What are the opportunities that were coming up? So I started to just look at how can I just coach and train and be in the space. So that's when I used to pitch up and create these workshops. I remember on the Animas Lounge, somebody had posted an opportunity, and all it said was that it was in Ruislip, which is not far from where I live. And I had no clue what this opportunity was. I was just like, it's local, I'm going to go and have a look into this. And it turned out that it was the introduction to the school. And 2.5 years on, I'm still working with the school. And that was something that I wasn't looking at education or working with young people. And I remember just following the nudges. I remember getting on the train. I had to go to Shoreditch to go and meet the company that provide the coach for the school. And I was actually going to be taking over from a mentor. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm not quite sure about mentoring, but let me just go and see. And so I went to have a conversation with them, and we clicked. It was all very informal. And there was just something, I don't know how to explain it, Nick, but there was just something telling me, this is good, like, stay with it. So again, I don't know how to explain it, but it's just almost trusting your gut. Something felt right. Something felt like it was going to be a learning opportunity for me. And actually, that's a point I want to make as well. I stopped looking at opportunities as just financial opportunities and started to look at opportunities and go, how am I going to grow from this? What am I going to learn? What am I going to get? And in most cases, with everything that I'm doing, I get a hell of a lot more than money. And actually, money is not a driver for me anymore at all. So if I got a project tomorrow and it paid a lot of money, that wouldn't be enough. It would need to be something that I'm being able to learn and grow from. So yeah, so I ended up in the school, and what was interesting was I went in and shadowed a mentor, and then I spoke to them about transformative coaching and asked them if they wouldn't mind me coaching instead of mentoring, and then we agreed that we would do a combination based on the children. And it turns out that it's worked so well that now the school only want to work with people that are going to use the coaching approach. So yeah, so that was one of the things that just allowed me to again follow those nudges, and just allow myself to explore something that was new. And what was interesting is I thought that the school was going to be easy. Oh, this is going to be great, just working with young people, and I see so many children in a day. But actually, it hasn't been easy. It's been an emotional roller coaster. I've loved every minute of it, but it's really stretched me as a coach, and as a person, because I've worked with so many different individuals and different situations, and I've had to learn about safeguarding and learn about education and young people, and I've loved every minute of it. And I am coming to an end of that, to the end of that project now, just because of my capacity and time. But it makes me so sad to think that I'm going to have to come away from it. But I know that it's not the end. And I've said to the school, this is definitely something that I see myself doing in the future and stepping back into.
That's amazing. And is this just like a public school or a private school?
Yes, it's a high school, a public high school, and they used to have a mentor and a counsellor, and they have, I think, a few others that work in just supporting different needs in education, but now they just have myself and the counsellor as the main people, so we both come in once a week on different days, and then they also have other people that just support learning needs.
I'm kind of intrigued by this, because there are thousands of schools, and I didn't realize that a school would have a coach. Is this a kind of a normal thing? Is it quite unusual?
So I would say it's quite normal for them to have a mentor or mentors in the space, but coaching, I think, is quite unusual, and it's been, I would say, it's for anyone that's thinking about doing this, I would highly recommend it. I'd highly recommend reaching out and getting in touch with the local education system, because for me, what I've seen and what, I don't want to knock the mentoring, because I think the mentoring can be really powerful. But what I witnessed was children being just spoken to. And so what would happen was you would get children in the space who just wanted to skip class, and they would come in and you weren't quite getting necessarily being able to help people. What's been amazing about the coaching is I've been able to work with children in ways that, in lots of different ways. But what's been, I suppose, the most heartbreaking thing is I get a lot of disclosures in this space. By me being able to create a space for that child to have space to speak and open up, we have had to make referrals to social services. And so what I would say is that, definitely step into safeguarding, understand safeguarding. And I would highly recommend for anyone that's going into education to make sure that you have a unit around you. So I don't go in just as Nisha alone. I go in through a company. If I was to go in independently, I would want to make sure, like I do at the school, that you work with the safeguarding officers, you work with the deputy heads, you work with a team of people, including the counsellor, because working with young people comes with a lot more than just the coaching.
This might be a bit specific and technical, but it might be useful for people on the call, Nisha. That organisation that you work through, is that just a unique one-off local organisation, or is it national? Like, what is that sort of thing?
So the organisation that I worked through, they were just a unique local organisation, and actually schools isn't what they do. They actually work with the local community in different capacities. The only contract that we've still got running is the one that I'm on at the moment. But I do believe that there are organisations out there that provide mentoring, and a lot of the schools do work, like I say, independently. So you can go in and offer your services, but I would highly recommend that if you can go in via an organisation, it would be a lot better, just so that you can get the supervision. For me, supervision, working with young children, is the most important thing. Almost after every school day, I like to be able to work with either the safeguarding officer or the company that I'm working for, in order to make sure that we have hashed out everything, because you've really got to listen to what's going on there with young people. They're quite vulnerable.
Really fascinating. Let's talk briefly about Better Up as well. I had a conversation recently on Coaches Uncaged where somebody was saying something along the lines of, I want to grow my own business, but I'm finding it really tough. I think I might just jack it all in and be an associate coach, as though the options were so binary. And actually what you've succeeded in doing is kind of going, well, actually associate work is part of my wider portfolio. So tell us what it means to work for Better Up or a similar I think you mentioned Ivy House as well. What does that look like? How does that work?
Yes, they're both very different organisations. With Ivy House, I'm a performance coach, and it's a much more intimate environment. So we work a lot closely, and there's certain ways of working. But I'm just going to focus on Better Up, because there's a lot of companies that work like Better Up, where they provide a platform. So Better Up is a global company. It provides a platform to lots of very big companies where their staff can have access to coaching. And there's quite a process to go through. So usually I believe you might need to be ACC qualified in order to be on the platform. It's really interesting you said that, Nick, though, because I think that's completely untrue. You know, the way these platforms are set up are so flexible that you can spend your entire week working for them and doing the associate coaching, or one day a week, like myself, or you might have flexibility of a certain number of hours in the week. There's so much flexibility, and for me, I think I said this earlier, but for me, when I stepped into the affiliate coaching platform, it was a game changer for me. It was the first time that I was able to breathe in my coaching practice and go, and now I can just coach. I've got clients here. I'm going to get a bit of money in, and it just allows me to be able to do a lot of the groundwork that I want to do with regards to building my football program. And I said earlier as well that for me, money is not necessarily the complete driver. It was important to me to have an income, of course, but the affiliate platforms provide so much more. They provide a community. They provide structures and tools that you use, and whilst you're using them with your clients, you're also learning. So actually, for anyone that's new, I would highly recommend going to work with an affiliate company, because you get to build structures and understand how to work with clients, you know, working with the diary management. It could be resources at the end of the coaching session, and also recognizing the different personalities that you can get in the space. For me, I would say the biggest growth and learning for me as a coach has been through the people I've been able to work with through the affiliate platforms. I, in the past, have absolutely dreaded, Nick, you know this, dreaded the thought of working with somebody who was like a vice president, or, you know, a C-suite director on a one-to-one coaching basis. And actually, through the affiliate space, I've been able to do that for some of the biggest companies in the world. So whilst I may not get into, I think a lot of other things that people say about affiliates is, well, you don't get paid as much money, but actually you're getting so much more than just money. And you're right, you could potentially go out there and earn a hell of a lot more for the hour. And especially, you know, as a PCC qualified coach, I know that I could earn a lot more per hour. But for me, it's not just about how much money I'm earning in the hour, it's about who I've got access to. I can go to my supervision, or I can go into the Animas training room with an array of examples of different coaching scenarios or different personalities, because of the diverse, you know, the diversity in my coaching practice.
How does it work, Nisha? In terms of the mechanics of it, do you just say I'm available for this many hours and people will then book you, or do you get paired up? What's that process?
Yeah, so you have a profile. You go through quite a processing to even be able to get onto the platform. But once you're on the platform, you have a profile, and you have a diary, and you can open up slots in your diary to say that you're available on particular days. And people are able to look at your profile and decide that they want to be matched up with you. They have launches. So sometimes it can be a bit quiet on the platform, and then they'll have a launch with a particular company, and all of a sudden there's people that are booking themselves in for you. And then you have an initial session. And the great thing about the affiliates, or this particular affiliate, is they provide you, if you want to, you know, a structure of a conversation of how to manage that first session, which again, this is fantastic for you to take into your own coaching practice. And so, you know, you have that first, essentially the consultation session with the client, and then they decide, you know, how often they work with you. And the great thing about the platform is that they're not paying for the coaching. So you are likely to get people showing up every week or every 2 weeks to work with you. So you get to build that rapport and the consistency and the learning, using different skills. And whilst they do provide training and give you ways of working, one thing I love about Better Up is the flexibility. I can show up as myself and coach as Nisha. Yes, they do have certain assessments that you can learn to go through, but again, I think this is all brilliant because it just allows you to learn and see, you know, these are some of the assessments that companies provide. And what's interesting is one of the assessments that they provide is, I look at it and essentially it's a values. These are the client's values, so I get to do some values work with my clients. And I don't want to brag, but I do think that the way we train at Animas and the way we learn how to coach allows us to go into this space powerfully. What's been really nice about my journey with Better Up is I've been contacted a couple of times. They're asking me, what am I doing in order to keep these clients coming? I'm like, coaching, and it's transformative coaching, and it's what we've learned in the space with Animas. So I think that the great thing about the skills that we have or that we learn in the training space is it really does work. And I think some people think, oh, how, you know, when I'm in training, people think, how does this work in corporate? But it's exactly what they're looking for. They absolutely love the transformative space and the transformative coaching.
This might sound like a silly question, and it's my final question for the content part before I open up to Q&A. Why is not every coach on this? I mean, it seems to me like it finally solves the biggest challenge within the coaching profession, which is getting clients. So, and I had a conversation recently with someone who said they were short of coaches on things like Better Up and Coach Hub. So what am I missing here? Why are not all coaches there? And why is it not like just become the obvious solution?
I think there's one or two things. I think firstly, the impatience. So it's a slow process. You really have to give yourself time. From when I first even onboarded with Better Up, so firstly you need to get through the onboarding. Once I went through the onboarding, which was long, by the way, there's a lot you need to do, but it's not difficult, but it just takes time. So you just need to be patient and take time. And then also there's a period of time when you're on the platform where nothing's coming through, and I think people give up. And what I would say is don't put all of your eggs in that basket straight away. Just be patient. It might be 4 to 6 months before you start seeing clients coming through, but be prepared to wait. And before you know it, the floodgates will open and you'll have a number of clients. Also, as you spend, the great thing about Better Up is the more time you spend on the platform, they then unlock. So at the moment, I think I'm a Premier Fellow coach, which is fantastic, but that's taken time as well. So initially I was only allowed to have, I think it was 12 clients, but now I can open up my diary to have 30 or 40 clients, but I don't have the time to do that at the moment. So that's the first thing I would say. And then I think the second thing, Nick, is the money. So I think people look at it and go, I'm not sure about that. But actually, if you think about it, you're on a platform where you're not having to do the marketing. You're being given, not only do you have access to clients, but you have access to amazing clients. I've been able to work with clients who will not be on social media. I would never have been able to find them. And I'm so glad that I've been able to work with them, because the amount of learning I've been able to do as a coach by working with these individuals has been incredible. So I would say really think about more than just the money that you're getting. Yes, you could earn more money per hour, but by the end of the month, you'll be amazed when you have enough clients coming in, how much money comes through at the end of the month consistently.
Yeah. Fabulous. Thank you, Nisha. Final question. How can people find out more about you if they want to check you out online?
So I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on Instagram. I'm not the best when it comes to my social media and marketing, but I am on LinkedIn and I am on Instagram. I'm not very often on Facebook, but I do have a presence on Facebook, so feel free to connect with me on any of those.
Do you have a website at all?
I do have a website as well. And you know, it's really interesting that I forgot that, right? And so many coaches get so fixated on your website, and actually you then forget about it. But yeah, I do have a website, and it's just my name, nishavyas.co.uk.
nishavyas.com. Fabulous. Thank you so much, Nisha. It's been amazing. I love what you're doing. I wish I could speak to you for much longer, but I also want to go to Q&A. So I'm just going to move to gallery view. And we've got 20 minutes, guys, for any questions for Nisha. So over to you.
Can I ask something?
Oh, go for it, Sheila, and then we'll get to Lena.
Hi, sorry about that. Good morning, everybody. Really lovely to hear from you, Nisha. And it's really strange. I was going through all the things he was saying and ticking them off one by one. Wembley Stadium, I used to work for the local authority and we brought lots of kids around when it was being built. So
Oh,
that was
amazing.
really interesting. Yeah, and the vulnerable coaches thing is, I actually wrote a book for that, for people who are being kind of mugged off by webinars that charge, stupid amounts of money. And obviously I've been working
How much were you selling your book for, Sheila?
Well, that's the thing. $9.99 on Amazon. It's only an ebook. But I've got big goals and plans. But
I think it's a really important point, and
Yeah.
we're not knocking. I'm not knocking, because I think there's some fantastic mentors out there, and I know that if it wasn't for my mentor, I wouldn't have been able to necessarily build my business. I did get mentoring at the early stages, but I think the messaging sometimes can be false, which is if you're not speaking to somebody, then you're not speaking to anyone, and you have to have a niche. And if you don't have a niche, I think that whilst that can be very, very helpful as you grow, it can also be debilitating for coaches, and it's not necessarily true. And also having to spend lots of money on these learnings. And thank you, Nick, for providing such a wealth of information, because actually what used to happen is we would go out and pay for this information, but actually a lot of the knowledge you get in the space with Coaches Uncaged and Animas. But you're right, Sheila. I think it's something that we should write about, because
yeah. I've got a question. Sorry, Nisha, I'm just really aware of the time, and loads of other people probably want to ask lots of questions. To be an affiliate coach, I'm assuming you have to be qualified and you have to have your accreditation.
So yes, it depends on the platform. So there are lots of different platforms, and I do believe that there will be platforms that would happily take coaches on as long as they have experience. For the company for Better Up, you do need to have a qualification. I don't believe it has to be ACC, so I do think that as long as you've got a coaching qualification, you can apply, but it might be a different fee. You might get a different fee.
Okay. Thank you.
It's interesting, Sheila, that years ago, these things just didn't exist. When I started as a coach, there were no associate organizations, apart from one whose name I always forget, and it was like an HR consultancy. Now there's so many, and they're growing all the time. And I just think, I really hope it'll be the future of coaching in some ways, because it just takes all that pressure off the very thing you're talking about, which is being mentored how to have a 7-figure business, which, by the way, great if that's what you want. But most coaches, actually, they're not really that interested in that. They just want to coach.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
And just one other thing that's come to my mind actually is the majority of my clients are global, America and different parts of the world, which is fantastic as well. So another, great opportunity is you get to work on a global scale, not just in the UK.
Wow. Thank you.
Let's go to Lena.
Hi.
Hello, Bella. Yeah, Nisha just taught module 2 a couple of weeks ago. So happy to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to see you.
I have 2 questions. So first, you said that you had the biggest learnings with people on the platform. So I was just wondering, first, what was your biggest learning from the client for your own self?
Yeah.
And second question, you said it took you some time to kind of utilize your network on LinkedIn. So do you have any tips or advices? Like currently I'm having a very extended network on LinkedIn, but they all know me as a finance professional. So do you have any advices on how to kind of make the switch?
Yeah, sure. So let me answer that in order. So with my learnings with the affiliate space, what's been great is, like I say, having access to work with people who wouldn't necessarily be sitting on social media. So these are people that, could be burnt out, are leaders that just kind of are always, heads down. And I did a lot of work throughout the pandemic, which was really interesting as well. I've worked with women in legal, which I wouldn't necessarily have reached out to as a niche. That was really interesting. They were on a coaching program to become legal partners. Now, if someone had said to me, can you go and coach these ladies who are going to, I would say absolutely no way. But what was interesting was I allowed myself to do that in the space because I was a part of the platform and they'd picked me as a coach. And it was incredible, the personalities and the styles their particular style of being is different to what I've been used to working to. So it made me step out of my comfort zone and I would say stretch myself in certain ways, communicate in different ways that works for them. They weren't doing the fluffy. I like to do some of the the nice stuff, but actually, you know, they were quite serious. But it was great. And what was interesting was, again, using the transformative approach, I had these women who initially appeared to me as quite solid and strong, you know, very emotional and very upset about certain things. And it was really interesting how they also found it difficult it took them a while to warm up into the space because they were used to working in such a male-dominated, structured environment where you leave your emotions at the door. And then, you know, the work that we got to do was just transformative, and for them to be able to show up as not just these legal partners, but as mothers and wives, and, you know, so that was amazing. Like I say, working for some of the people within some of the biggest companies in the world, which again would be quite daunting, you know, I thought, to me it would have been initially quite daunting, but it's just been nice to be able to work with people who will sit quite high up in senior leadership teams in these huge companies. And again, it's just human to human conversation. So again, it's just access, and then also better up opened up the platform for direct consumers. So I also worked with people who weren't a part of a company, but that were looking for coaching and coming through directly. And some of the characters that I came across in that space and some of the challenges I came across in that space, I don't think I would have been able to, again, maybe, but I come across these people again, worldwide connections. But I remember one particular client, I felt everything she presented to me, I was being a little bit judgmental. I noticed that there was some real big themes here, and I was noticing a lot of my own stuff going on. And so what it allowed me to do was take that to supervision. And again, I grew as a coach. I just found it so amazing how much of me she wasn't getting in the space, and I'd never experienced that before. And again, that was something that I got to experience off the platform, the difference between you being able to be a coach and work with anyone, but actually what happens when you work with someone that you may not want to work with. You know, I'm working for a platform and this person's chosen me as a coach. How do I now navigate this? And it could have been that I contacted Better Up and said, look, I cannot work with this person, but I knew that there was something for me to work through. And by taking that to supervision and going, this person is bringing up all of this stuff for me, how can I work through it? And working through it, recognizing it. What was amazing was going back into the space and literally transforming our relationship in a session was just, it was beautiful. And again, I just don't think I would have got that experience outside of that platform. So that was, I think is that enough for my how it's been? Yeah, so that's the first question. And then the second one with regards to LinkedIn, I would say show up, keep showing up, and don't, I think Nick says this as well, and actually thank you, Nick, because I think I learned this through you. You know, allow yourself to be a voice and speak about things that you know about. I remember when we were on the supervision course and you gave us the opportunity to write blogs, and I remember thinking, I'm going to write a blog about supervision. Who am I to write a blog about supervision? But I remember again taking the opportunity, feel the fear and do it anyway. And I remember taking that opportunity and writing about the 7 conversations with David Clutterbuck, and I really enjoyed it. And again, it was a learning experience for me. So I would say to you, Eleanor, I know that you might have an identity within your network, but don't be afraid to go out and recreate that identity with them. And, you know, I've worked in the space with you. You're extremely knowledgeable. You're going to be a fantastic coach. Go out and show the world who you are.
Thank you, Nisha.
Thank you very much.
And let's go to Brenda. Been patiently waiting there.
That's right. I'm a bit croaky because I'm actually off my day job, sick. So, so unexpectedly able to come to this. Thanks ever so much, Nisha. It's been so interesting. I want to go back to niching or not. So like everything in, you know, I'm experiencing and very familiar with that. As Kat Burnett once said, it's like the piranhas, you know, circling around you as a new coach. I get so much stuff coming up on LinkedIn and Facebook and stuff. And I've done some of the, you know, like courses, haven't paid yet. But all the marketing people that are advising coaching, coaches are saying if you speak to everyone, you speak to no one. And I struggled. I'd never heard the word, well, I had heard the word niche, but I hadn't really thought about it. I've never worked in marketing before. And this is the bit, which is why I'm so grateful for Nick doing the business side of coaching with this, your best year yet. And I'm starting to be, what's the word, follow their advice. I've been trying to, niche and work out. I kind of roughly knew, but, I've got some words now. And except while all that's happening, I'm actually getting clients, one or two, not loads, in different ways that aren't my niche necessarily, which is fine because I want the experience in my first year. I qualified in January, by the way. So, I'm quite open to coaching anyone, but I do have a sort of preferred ideal client, but I'm not fussed if that's not who I coach. But in terms of trying to get consistency of getting clients in, and I did look at associate stuff, and quite a couple that I looked at, you did need to be ACC or PCC or something, and I think that was better up, but they might have changed it now. And I have been told by another coach it can take 6 months to sign up, especially with Better Up. So I'm sort of like, what do I do about this niching thing? Should I keep pursuing it? Shall I just let things emerge, or do both?
I would say, and I totally understand, thank you so much for sharing that, Brenda, and I hope you're feeling okay. I would say that it's okay, if you've got an idea, go with it. You can still show up on social media with it, but just hold it lightly. And I know I say that a lot for anyone that's trained with me. So I say that about models, but I would say hold your niche lightly as well. So if you look at some of my LinkedIn and social media, I show up and I'm talking to the football audience, but actually to just hone in on that and be fixated on that, when it starts to feel icky, I don't know if that's the right word to use, but you start to feel the heaviness of it, that's when you know that it's probably not going to last long and you're going to start to come away from that. So what I would say, it's okay for you to start to build your niche, but mine's still growing. And I'll give you another example. When I first started out and I said I wanted to only work in football, I actually, through my network, got one of the biggest contracts in football, a contract with one of the biggest clubs in London. And I remember when I got that contract, I was like amazed, like I was in my element, and I was like, this is my niche and this is what I'm doing. And I do believe that I peaked too soon. It was great, and I could probably still go back and do some work with them. But I remember going in there and giving them 1,000%, and doing everything. And actually now, when I look back at that, I think, gosh, if I just taken my time a little bit, and allowed myself to master my craft as a coach and master my craft as in group facilitation, but how much better that can be. So what I would say is build your niche, but just allow yourself, don't try to be this overnight success. And also with the money as well, I think that's another message that comes through, to how much money you're earning. Allow yourself to bring value and allow that to come naturally as well. I've paid a lot of money for coaching with coaches that whilst I'm happy to have spent that money, I won't go back to them. And I don't want to be known as that coach. I want to be someone can come to me and think, actually, do you know what? That work I did with Nisha was great. I'd like to be able to come back to her and work with her again. But that's me personally. Other people may work in different ways, but I just think that, balancing it out, take your time. I'm now able to confidently charge money that I didn't dream of being able to charge once upon a time. And that's again because I've allowed myself to build my business and master my craft. So hold that niche lightly, have one, allow it to develop and allow it to evolve. And also you'll be amazed whilst you're working with different people, what you might connect to and how that niche might develop as well. So I know mine has, whilst when I first started out, who I wanted to work with in football and who I'm now working with in football is quite different based on all the experience that I've had over the 4 years. Does that answer your question, Brenda?
Brenda, am I right in thinking your brand is the Stress Less Coach? Is that correct? Yeah. I mean, if I can add to what Nisha's been talking about, I would also say in holding it lightly, you've got a brand, but that brand is actually beautifully broad in as much as stress is in many, many places. And so the Stress Less Coach could have one way of working in corporates and another way of working with individuals and another way of working in schools. And it would all fit under the umbrella of the Stress Less Coach. So also kind of think about the niche as just simply your message, but that message can be distributed in different ways and different groups. Yeah, thanks, Brenda. Any final questions for Nisha? And if not, Nisha, I want to get you thinking about one last piece of advice or suggestion or piece of wisdom you'd like to offer. Let's go to Nikki.
Sorry, I was trying to find the little hand on my screen. I couldn't find it quick enough. Thank you so much, Nisha. That was just fascinating and so helpful. I feel like you've talked to so many things that I'm kind of wrestling with in my mind and at the moment. So it's been super helpful. I wanted to ask you if it's okay about corporate. Sure. My plan, having been a female leader in corporate in the past for a long time and then coming away from it to have a career break, I want to go back and help in some way. And for me, it's much more kind of about purpose than money, but I would like to work in that environment. And my question really is about any advice you'd have in approaching corporate. My father-in-law says to me, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And that for me doesn't feel very authentic in terms of I'm not a salesperson and I'm not very good at kind of pestering and trying to get the balance right for me in terms of, you know, what you said, being helpful and adding value in the conversations I have, but also knowing that it's not going to happen unless I progress it. Yeah. I hope that makes sense. I just wondered if there's any advice you can give, because that's my big hurdle at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there a particular area in corporate?
So I used to work in retail, so I spent 20 years in retail, and my personal growth was all about my leadership journey in kind of a male-dominated world. And my hope is to, you know, what they say, pass the ladder back down to kind of female leaders for the future. So working with kind of emerging talent, but very much female. And it's, you know, getting that cut through with the contacts I've had from the past and the new contacts I've made without wanting to appear too annoying, but also having that kind of tenacity to keep at it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What I would say as you were speaking, and one of the things that I know that I've done from the beginning is show up to events. There's lots of fantastic networking events, and especially now that the world's opening up, that you can attend, especially for women in corporate and women leaders. I would say as much as possible, especially if you've got a particular area like retail that you want to work in, start to build a network by showing up to events or staying subscribed to their newsletters or the particular forums. I think like the London Chamber of Commerce, you know, going in to connect with those at that level there allows you to be in the right places, build that network, just build relationships. You know, I think go in with the end in mind of like, this is the impact that you know you can have. What you do is incredible, and I know that eventually what we do is going to be, I think it's just going to be one of those things that has to happen in all corporate arenas. So we're in there nice and early, and I would say, you know, that what you can offer is something that at the moment everyone's looking for. I think we're in quite a fortunate position. A lot of the corporates are talking about emotional resilience, emotional resilience and regulation. They're talking about burnout. Mental health is important in a lot of corporates, and a lot of them have now got a specific area in HR. So I would say build that HR network, and a lot of them need somebody like you to come in and support them. So it's a great time to just network, build relationships, and speak up, like show what you do. I would say LinkedIn can be quite a scary place because, you know, if somebody might not like your post, or you might find that you're not getting much engagement. But what's great about LinkedIn is that a lot of people are viewing. You'll be able to see the views, and actually any business that I've got off LinkedIn has been from people that have never engaged with my posts.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, it's very daunting, and you kind of, and I think because of the algorithms, the more you look at coaching, you suddenly are just bombarded with every other coach that has ever existed, and then everything that you think about doing seems like kind of regurgitating, or it's been done before. And I've got this real to wrestle with being authentically me in what I do, and not just wanting to post for the sake of it. So that, you know, that whole LinkedIn thing is just totally daunting, I think, for so many new coaches.
Yeah, LinkedIn can be daunting, but what I would say is just put yourself out there. People are watching, and like I say, a lot of the corporates are cash rich and time poor, so don't take it personally if they're not, you know, commenting or engaging. But once you connect with something that they're after, they will come to speak to you. They'll enter your inboxes. And also, what I would say is put yourself in the groups. There's lots of groups where you can go in and comment as well. So I say show up in the spaces where you're being able to speak as an authority in the space.
Really helpful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nisha. Just very quickly, Nikki, have you watched the interview with Amy Wilkinson on?
I have, yeah, and I've reached out to Amy, and I talk to Amy a lot now. We've become Animas buddies.
That's great.
Yeah, she's more on the food side, isn't she?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I've spent some time with Amy. She's been fab.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Great. Nisha, final thing from you. I'd love like one piece of advice, one suggestion, just some parting wisdom from you.
Yeah, sure. So I didn't get a chance to speak about this, and I think it's quite important. So whilst I absolutely love what I do, have also experienced a little bit of burnout in coaching as well. So what I would say is, and I think what I'm going to say might contradict this slightly, a lot of the messaging that I used to see on social media was, build a life where you're out and traveling and doing all these things, and you absolutely can do that, and that will come. But what I would say is, don't be afraid of hard work. Okay, I know there's a lot of messaging out there to say that, especially now that you've got this freedom lifestyle, work, take Mondays off and take Fridays off, and you absolutely can do that. But decide what it is that you want. Do you want a thriving coaching practice, or do you want to have a part-time job? And there are going to be peaks within that. There's going to be times where you will feel like you're working incredibly hard, or you're working 7 days a week. But I would say, don't be afraid of putting in the work and stretching yourself. I know that's a term you use, Nick, as well, but just don't be afraid to open and grow and be there and adopt these learning opportunities. I would say just go and be in the space, but also be mindful of your own mental well-being as well. So take breaks when you can, but don't be afraid of the hard work. Keep going, trust the process, and I would say just coach. As long as you're coaching and you're in that space, wherever possible, coaching, training, pitching up and creating workshops, get it wrong, learn in the process, but don't be afraid to put yourself out there. And again, don't allow money to be the only factor. Allow yourself to look at all the other opportunities that you can get from working. It might be going into a school 1 day a week, or half a day a week for free initially, to support, but you're going to get so much more from that space than if you were to just be sitting at home looking at social media. So just be out there.
Yeah, fabulous. Nisha, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's lovely getting to know, obviously I know you, but it's lovely to get to know you even more through this process. So thank you very much indeed. And guys, thanks as always for attending. I'm away for the whole of July. I'm cycling across Europe. So Brinsley will be doing the interviews in July, but I will see you in August. Thanks very much. See you soon. Bye for now.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Nisha.
I'm just reading these comments.